and I was in a very also unhealthy environment at work. That there was no psychological safety, and I just felt that I needed to like make a change emotionally and launch the company. And that was like back in 2000, oh my gosh, 2014, 2015. And it has been such a rewarding experience. So that's kind of like a long story short, my journey.
EQ gangsters, what is going on? Super excited to share this episode with you. This episode is sponsored by LimaCharlieNetwork.com. It is a group of phenomenal podcasters and influencers that have military backgrounds, either are active duty military or previously served or somehow connected to the military. Great, phenomenal people, again, leaders and influencers. For more details, check out LimaCharlieNetwork.com. In this episode, I share a great conversation with a super lady named Jean Payne. She is the CEO of her own company, and she got there with an amazing story, really as a result of some emotional, trauma and emotional injury, to be honest. And so she shares her journey coming from Colombia, where her dad put her on a plane at 15 years old, sends her to the United States with really no knowledge of who she's going to be living with, some distant relatives and family members, and ends up going through 4 different high schools, joins the Navy, gets into corporate America, has some very toxic leadership experiences with some men who had some, just some very poor toxic leadership. But from that experience, she turned her lemons into lemonade by saying, I am not going to allow this to happen to me or anyone else again because I'm starting my own company. So it's a phenomenal story, phenomenal journey, and she shares some great insights of how she runs her company and to impact other people and serve other people. So can't wait for you to hear this story from Jean, CEO Jean Payne. How are you, Jean? It's good to see you.
It's nice seeing you. Yes. I'm so excited. How's the family doing?
Super. Really well. Thank you for asking. How about you?
You know what? I have been really thinking about this topic, and you intrigued me with just your passion with emotional intelligence, and I have been actually reading about it a little bit this morning, and I was thinking about. One of the things you talked about, family-wise, how you have been spending the past 17 years, right? With stay-home mom and dad. And so that's a huge success, Noble. Just congratulations. I admire you for making that commitment, because many people, they define success by what they have accomplished in their career. But you know what? You guys being able to do that is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you, Gene. I really appreciate that. Yeah, thanks a lot. It has been, there's so much just in that, Gene. It took us probably 5 years of really, really intense work, probably 70 to 80 hours a week, in order to get to the place where we could, stay at home, be financially independent at age 30. But the funny thing is that I did it for very emotionally unhealthy reasons. And I was at a very emotionally unhealthy place when we did it. I was emotionally needy. I was emotionally codependent, toxic positivity, just a lot of dysfunction. So that's another kind of example of how you can be successful for unhealthy reasons. I'm thankful the outcome that led to us being able to position ourselves to stay at home. So I would say, I guess it's worth it, but I'm glad I'm in a much emotionally healthier spot also. So thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, Jean. So Jean, what's your story?
Wow. Where do I begin? Now, long story short, I was born in the U.S. And went to Colombia, South America when I was 2 years old. My father, he came to the U.S. like many people do to work and earn money and go back to Colombia. So fast forward to 15 years old, he basically just sent me to the U.S. He shipped me to the U.S. in a way, relatives that I didn't know, people that I didn't know, went to 4 different high schools, learned English in the process. And just so you know, don't use slangs because I visualize everything. So raining cats and dogs and all that stuff, I'm always like, that's not possible. So I'm just warning you. And so, I just learned a lot, 4 different high schools, joined the military, joined the Navy, very grateful for that. And fast forward, spent 15 years in the utility industry. And kind of like you, back in 2014, we adopted actually, no, in 2014, I made the leap of faith that I didn't want to kind of like do this anymore. And after adopting a beautiful baby in 2010, 4 months old, and my husband and I kind of had an aha moment, is that, you know what? We're not going to do this. I'm not going to be driving 75 miles each way. And I don't know how familiar you are with the Northern Virginia traffic, but it takes you 3-4 hours to drive 54 miles. And I was in a very also unhealthy environment at work, that there was no psychological safety, and I just felt that I needed to like make a change emotionally and launch the company. And that was like back in 2014, 2015. And it has been such a rewarding experience. So that's kind of like a long story short, my journey.
Okay, so lots to unpack there. So thank you, first of all, for kind of sharing that overview there. I want to go in a little bit more detail into some of those areas of your story. And what was, so you, from 0 to 15, you were in Colombia. Okay, and how was that experience? What was your relationship like with, parents, father, that kind of thing? And then, let's stop there, and then I'll ask you the next questions.
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I am one of 4 siblings, and for anybody who has any experience with the Hispanic culture, I grew up with very strict, very, very strict parents. You talk about emotional intelligence, psychological safety, and just being able to be myself. None of that. So it was a very militaristic environment of, this is what you do, this is what you're supposed to do, and you don't ask any questions. I grew up with a father who was very mentally abusive, and so there was no safe place to talk, right? So that was my environment. I tell people that I rode donkeys to school. My dad is a farmer. I was attacked by a rooster, and so it was, and especially for anybody who's familiar with Colombia, it's not that way anymore. But the social and political instability in Colombia that forced my dad, to send me to the U.S. And I know that I remember from my childhood and coming to the U.S. is that I was so resentful of being dragged away from my family in Colombia, right? But now as I reflect back, I'm so just grateful for him doing that.
So again, thank you for your transparency. And I'm so sorry that you did not feel safe, that had that safety as a child growing up. And it sounds like so much structure that was probably, had impacts on you, emotionally. And, so thank you for sharing that. Do you feel like you've had an opportunity to work through some of those emotional things that you went through as a child, and maybe that transition from Colombia to the U.S.?
It took me a while. it took me a while to feel emotionally safe, right? To work through all those experiences, and I really think, Novel, that didn't really happen until I met my husband, who's also a Navy veteran. Until I met somebody that I felt safe to do that with, right? And even then, it took a while. And then being in the corporate environment, most of the time, and you know this, is that everybody's focused on having this facade, right, of what you should be, what you should behave like. So I think I spent most of my corporate time being an imposter, and you know what I'm talking about, an imposter of hiding who I am. I remember one of my performance evaluations, my manager said, "Hey, once you speak great English, you're going to be a good employee." And I spent the next couple of years buying tapes in how to get rid of my accent, right? And so it has taken a long time to work through that. But I think it really happened when I left the corporate world to start the company. That's when I felt that, you know what, I don't need to be an imposter anymore. I can be me.
That's right. And what led you to the decision to become a CEO or start your own company?
I think wanting to make a difference, wanting to make a change, creating a place where people feel safe, valued, and respected. And to me, those are three things that are non-negotiable for my work, for our work environment. I think I want to go back to when I was in the corporate world. There's so much time spent on people is technical skills. And I had this mentor, his name is, he's a senior VP for Dominion. His name is Kevin Curtis. And one of the things that he taught me is that, you can have the technical skills, but you got to bring, and he's an engineer, and you got to bring that emotional aspect so people feel safe and valued. And he was like, the way how he is almost like an outcast because it doesn't align with, oh, you're an engineer and you're what? And how come you're not this way? And so really it was that kind of made me decide, you know what, I think I need to move on and I need to create something where I have autonomy of what kind of culture I want to create.
Excellent. Because you had said a little bit earlier that you had a really toxic corporate work experience, right? Somewhere in there?
Yes.
In your corporate experience?
Yes.
Was it a controlling leader or toxic culture or work environment? Like what led to that toxic experience?
I think as a woman, face a lot of disrespect, not being value for the skills that I bring to the table, having to prove myself beyond the skirts and high heels, right? And then also, working for some leaders where instead of them encouraging you and building you up, they view you as a competition and as a threat. So I think the trigger point for me to make the decision was when I had in evaluations, performance evaluation, and you remember this from being in the military, that we take that very serious. And I remember having like a 4.6. This was early 2014, right? And then having 6 months later, having a performance review, and it was 3.4. So I started asking, why? And I was told that I was too direct, that I communicated too much, and I was just too driven to get things done. So at that point, I said, you know what, it's time to move on.
Wow, that took a tremendous amount of courage and bravery and boldness to, step out of your comfort zone. So I mean, in one sense, and tell me if I am understanding you correctly, that it sounds like the toxic environment almost pushed you out of the nest to start your own business. Is that accurate?
Yes,
So
very much so.
so there's a silver lining in that, toxic environment. It's funny how God works. That's a very similar story for my journey. How I even got into teaching emotional intelligent leadership now is because two very toxic experiences. One of my own doing when I yelled at my wife 3 times in 3 weeks, and then another one kind of in the same time frame but unrelated. We had a very, very toxic narcissist that was very successful in our business team, and those two events so close together led me to, man, I need to learn about this emotional health stuff, because number one, I'm not emotionally healthy and neither is this dude. I need to learn about this stuff. So even though those experiences were very negative, it's funny how God can turn it into a positive, in our lives. Because I'm so glad. And then it's so neat to hear you say, Gene, that, it sounds like one of your big themes as a CEO of your own company is safety, feeling valued and respected, like, because you didn't feel any of those things. Like, so it's so cool that, well, now you're the boss and the hot sauce, so you can make that call. So how do you as the CEO of your own company, how do you do that? How do you create a culture that is safe, where your team feels valued and respected?
So the mission of Verbatim Consulting, which is a company that I started back in 2014 with the support, invaluable support of my dear husband. I couldn't have done it without him. We help people work better together. That is our mission. And we do that through culture assessments, workforce training, diversity, equity, inclusion. We are a very customized service provider. And for me, Noel, when I started the company, it was never about having 200 employees or being a millionaire, none of that stuff. For me, it was to create an environment where people felt safe, respected, and valued. Okay. Fast forward to who we are today. We have 50 plus, close to 70 employees. We have done exceptionally well. But there's one thing that I always tell our employees is that culture is non-negotiable. A healthy culture in our work environment is non-negotiable. I don't care what technical skills somebody brings to the table. If they don't fit in with our work environment, I'm not going to hire them. So how do I do that? Is that when people coming into the company, we do the typical panel interviews, but I also have that person strategically interview people from our company so they can tell them what kind of culture we have and why they want to come and work for us. We have had instances where if somebody's not a good fit for the culture, and we do coaching, we try to help them. At the end of the day, it's okay to part ways if you're not a good fit, right? So I have made that a very deliberate, and I got their back. One of the things that I have done is to develop what is called the 20 fundamental behaviors to work at TIBC, okay? And one of them, the first one is, I got your back. You're going to be respected by the customer. You're going to be respected by the colleagues, but I'm also expecting you to lean in. And also the number 20 is like, you got to be able to say, hey, when is enough? We got to part ways. So.
That's awesome. So the kind of the industry standard of emotional intelligence is by, Daniel Goleman kind of coined it, the 4 main categories. Now I've got an emotional intelligence assessment that actually assesses 15 different categories, but you just using the standard basic model of emotional intelligence of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management. Which of those four areas, Gene, do you feel you're strongest in, and which do you feel you still have some room to grow?
I would say the self-awareness, I would say probably is one of my strongest points. I try to be very self-aware and present. That's one of the things that I think, that us as leaders and as colleagues that we struggle the most because we're multitasking. So for me is this the self-awareness. And I'll give you an example. We with our team, I'm very in tune with, and I think this is because this goes back to the deliberate approach, right? Of getting to know everybody and really understanding everybody. I had gotten to the point with my team that I'm self-aware of myself, but I'm also I'm aware of all my surroundings and the emotional state of people. Like I can now, when I talk to my team, I can discern quickly, are they having a good day? Are you cranky? What is going on with your life? And what do you need? So I think the self-awareness is something that I feel is one of the strongest points. I think also is one of the areas that I feel that I could probably maybe do a little bit better is the self-regulation piece. I tend to internalize the emotional state of other people a lot, right? And I think that sometimes can be somewhat unhealthy because I start walking the journey of somebody else when maybe sometimes it's not my journey to walk.
That's great awareness, that insight there. Have you always been self-aware? And if not, how did you become self-aware? How did you develop that aspect, that dimension, that strength of your self-awareness?
I think that happened when I decided to stop being an imposter. I think it took a while. It took close to 40 years to get there. It really, I think, is a lot of self-work, finding myself, being confident with myself, taking the position that I don't have to be liked by everybody. And it's okay. And I'm confident that, you know what, it's not a popularity contest. And it's okay to have my position, to be humble, to be compassionate. But at the end of the day, you have to realize, my mom, you were talking Spanish. My mom told me one time, tú no eres monedita de oro para que todo el mundo te guste. Meaning that I'm not a gold coin to be liked by everybody, right? So I think once I did the self-search to be confident that, you know what, I'm a good person. And it's okay to say that, right? And I think when I had that realization to free myself, to stop being an imposter, I think that's when it happened. That's when that transition happened.
That's great. And what did that, you'd mentioned kind of that self-work, that internal work. What did that, or what has that look like for you? What does that mean when you say, okay, when I did that internal work and made that realization that I had some imposter syndrome going on, I'm like, I made the decision that I'm not going to continue this imposter syndrome. What does that internal work look like for you?
So in order to get to where I got to, right? A lot of, I talk about the self-development. There's two things that I take very serious, right? And you and I are doing coaching together. There's two things. There's self-development and there's self-care. Okay. The self-development is that if you're not reading, if you're not doing something every day to develop yourself, you're not growing. So for me, that's one thing that is very important. I'm always, I have 2 or 3 or 4 books that I'm constantly reading, going back and forth. What can I do? What can I do to grow? What can I do to help others? Right. So that is one thing. The other thing is the self-care. It is so important. People take it for granted. So many people, because there's so much going on. But I would say that the getting the self-center, the exercising, the taking time for yourself, that is the self-worth. So I think when you start growing on the self-worth, self-development, right? That's when things start happening, because if I feel good about myself, if I have the self-worth, if I'm constantly learning, that became like a paradigm shift for me to become better, to be present. Because if I can be present and I have all those things, the empathy, the sympathy, and the emotional intelligence being present, then I can be better. So that's how it happened.
That's great. And you touched on a little bit your self-care, and maybe one of those being working out. How else? What are some ways that you take care of yourself?
The other thing is the mindfulness, right? Oh my gosh, for me is a lot of the self-care is like the body care, the time for myself, recharging. And those are the key things. It just, as silly as it sounds, that taking your dogs for a walk, right? To me, that's recharge. 30 minutes of that, it recharges me. When I have a meeting with my team, I try to deliberately be present, to be aware, to listen to them, right? So there are many different things that I do for the self-care, and I think you have to decide what is it that works best for you, and you got to be intentional about it. Novel, that I am going to do it. I'm actually going to put self-care on my calendar.
Totally agree. Totally agree. One of the things that I encourage people to do, both my corporate clients, my corporate executive clients, and also my podcast audience and YouTube audience, is to begin a consistent and regular and frequent emotional fitness program. Not necessarily even to pull it out when you need it, because sometimes you can get rusty. But I think, in my opinion, that if you can make your emotional fitness a consistent part of your life, now you can start building up your emotional muscles and your emotional agility, your emotional endurance, your resilience, that I feel are strengthened with consistent effort over time. And I love what you said there about being intentional about it. Again, not like, well, maybe I'll do that when I get some free time. Well, as you know, if it's not, for me anyway, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. It's got to be programmed into my schedule. It's got to be intentional. Like you said, I love that. That was great what you said there. What has been, and maybe you've already said it, but I'm just going to ask it in a different way, and maybe it's a new answer, maybe it's the same answer. Either way is fine. What has been the most challenging or most difficult thing emotionally for you to learn or overcome?
That's a fantastic question. I think I would say psychological safety as a leader and as a person, because you can talk about all day long, right, about creating psychological safety, but are you really ready for it? Okay. Are you really ready for me to share with you what I'm feeling? That's hard. I think that's been very hard for me as a CEO, having a staff meeting where I have preached and talked about how I want you to have psychological safety, to be emotionally vulnerable. But then when I start hearing those things, I don't like it. And being able to process that, and being able to sit there and say, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for being open and not attacking them so they never do it again. So even as a spouse, how many times you're just like, you know what? you just don't want to hear it. Or even if hey, tell me what you were thinking, I'm not ready for it. So that has been the biggest one. And also because my childhood, because I think your childhood shapes who you become as a person, as a leader, right? I mean, going back to, it's funny, my husband and I laugh about this, but I call it the suitcases. You know what I mean? You start talking like, let me just pull out my suitcases. I talk about, I was afraid and terrified to talk to my father. My mom always talked about, oh yeah, honey, you can tell me everything that you need to tell me. And then I would be transparent. And then the next time that I got in trouble, she would throw everything back to me. You know what I mean? So the emotional, the psychological safety has been, it is, it will continue to be my biggest challenge.
Wow. And as a coach, it is absolutely not surprising to hear that based on what you've shared. So again, thank you for your vulnerability. And again, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense why that would be such a massive thing for you, both on something that you desire, that you want, but also, not only for you personally, but also to provide to other people, but also why maybe it has been hard for you to do that, why it's been such a challenge for you. That's great. And thank you again for the awareness. That's great awareness. And again, the vulnerability for you to share that. So thank you, because those are definitely not easy, things to share. So thank you for sharing that. How do you apply emotional intelligence? And you shared some things, but let me ask it again. It may elicit some new thoughts or new answers. How do you apply emotional intelligence to your team, to your staff, to your company, to your culture?
I challenge people to be themselves. I challenge people to bring themselves to work. I need all of us to be vulnerable. I need to know who you are. I spend so much time with you. I need to know more beyond the technical capabilities, because to me, that's the most important thing is, you know what? I can train, we can hire somebody who is at the 70% level of technical and get him up to the 100, right? In 2 or 3 months. But that emotional piece is so critical to the success of the team. So for me, has always been, is you can be firm, you can be fair, but also you have to create an environment when people feel that they can be me. And you don't have those. I mean, coming from the military, people will be like, oh yeah, I want to hear your perspective. I tell you, you never get promoted again. And next thing you know, you're being passed. The same thing with the corporate environment. I was just, having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and, everybody will tell you that, oh yeah, you can tell me everything I'm here for you. You can tell me, but the moment you express or you tell them how you feel, the relationship can change, right? Your career can take a detour. And so for me again, it goes back to the emotional intelligence piece, right? I want people to be themselves. I want to create an environment, and I need to be ready for it. And so the joke in our team, and I have used this many times, when you really feel that you need that psychological safety, you need to connect that self-awareness. I always say, hey, may I have permission to speak freely? Yep. Everything is off, right? Rank, title, whatever. Let's just have a conversation. Tell me how you feel. And it works.
That's awesome. That's great. You shared some really, really great perspectives there. And it really is a two-way street in order for that dynamic to be successful. because not only do I need to provide the safety for you to speak freely, but also there's also responsibility on the person delivering their feelings or emotions or thoughts in a safe way, right? Because you could say, well, Noble, speak freely, and I could say, well, you suck and you're terrible. Okay, well, now I'm not being safe for you. So it really is a two-way street. I have to be safe, you have to be safe. And then something else that I've learned in my own emotional growth journey is that if I don't feel safe with my own intense and strong emotions, I'm definitely probably not going to feel safe with your strong, intense emotions. So in order for me to create a safe environment for you to express strong, intense emotions, I've got to be comfortable with my own first. And because that's the dynamic that's happened as I've grown emotionally. Before my emotional growth, if I said, "Hey, Gene, tell me, like no kidding, tell me how you're feeling," and maybe you had, "Man, Noble, today's a terrible day. I'm feeling terrible, and I got what's going on." I'd be like, "Okay, all right, that's great, Gene. Okay, all right, let's change the topic," because I didn't know how to handle your emotions, but now I feel totally comfortable with whatever emotions you may bring to the conversation, but it's been a result of my own emotional growth journey. So it's so awesome to hear how intentional you are as a CEO to not, because again, it's and you have experienced this yourself. The CEOs that say, "Hey, people are important," they may say it as a tweet on Twitter or in some interview, but in actual daily practice, living it out, nobody in the company feels valued, safe, or respected. And so to hear you, not just say, "Oh yeah, hey, this is important to me," but to hear how you're applying it and living that out as the CEO is awesome. And I'm so proud of you for practicing what you're preaching and living what you're saying is important, because I think that takes courage too. It takes courage to not only say, "Hey, these values are important to me," but then have the courage to live that out, but then also still be vulnerable and transparent. Say, "Hey, I'm still working on stuff." As a CEO, that's awesome, Gene. That's amazing. How does that feel to be in that place as a person and as a CEO? How does that feel?
I'm here smiling, and thank you for sharing that. And I often don't reflect on some of the emotional growth that I have had for the past several years. And but it has been quite a journey. I will tell you, the evolution of going from the corporate world to being a CEO. Somebody making a mistake that cost money, and just kind of pausing and really, first instant you want to get upset, right? "Oh my gosh, we're losing all this money, all that." But then the next minute I'm thinking, you know what? This is where I have to walk the talk. This is where I'm going to be like, okay, let's just sit down. Let's take a look at the mistake. Tell me what you were thinking, how you were feeling. What are you feeling now? And being able to say, you know what? You're going to get, this is an investment opportunity that we have here. Okay. I mean, that's priceless, because you have somebody who's feeling probably this big already, right? Because they made a mistake. How cool is it that my peers, not just me, because, we have layers of leadership in the team. I want them to create the same environment that I have created. Okay. The other thing too is, anybody who cries at work. How many times have I been told, if you're a dude, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you're crying." If you're a girl, you're all great. Now, she is. You know what I mean? That is, we have been almost conditioned that is such a weakness, right? I mean, and it's tough. And you know what? There's been a couple of times, I think 2 times or 3 times, I've just been so frustrated, and I can turn the camera off, right, and just weep, or I can just like, you know what? This is me. I mean, it has happened like 2 or 3 times in the past 7 years. It's like, this is me. I'm frustrated, and this is why. You know what? And it's not work. It's just I'm having a bad day or something happened, and this is what it's going through. So excuse me. This is what I'm feeling. And I have seen people on my team too, you know, Marines with 30 years of experience, being able to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling that way. But it's because we have created that the emotional safety environment that is so important.
And that's huge, Gene. I know it's so funny that you mentioned that example specifically. So former Army Airborne Ranger in the 82nd Airborne Division, and big bald bearded tattooed guy. And I no joke, I cry once a day, easily once a day. And my daughter, who's 14, just rolls her eyes. Daddy, are you crying again? Yes. I said, Amor, this is like, I'm thankful that I can express my emotions. Like before I used to stuff and avoid and stew and brood. And now I can emote, and I'm very comfortable emoting, and I don't care who's around. I don't care who it's in front of. I'm so thankful that, and like you, it sounds can finally honor our God-given feelings and emotions with whatever we're experiencing, and normalizing it, because everybody has feelings and emotions. So stop trying to pretend like you don't have feelings and emotions. You have pain and suffering and joys and happiness just like I do. Why do we pretend like it doesn't exist? Like, and it just sounds like you are creating and have created such an emotionally intelligent company that is providing a tremendous service in such a loving and wholesome way that is a win, not just for your customers, but also for your team, your company, your organization. Like it's a big giant win-win, which, for me, that's how I define success in business is if you win and I win, that's a beautiful thing. And it just really seems like you have done and are doing that. And I'm just so excited to hear that, Gene. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's got to be an amazing feeling.
Well, it's just, I always joke, it's just keeping it real, right? We are, our company is like any, dysfunctional family, right? And I think it's just being able to recognize that, and being able to be yourself, recognize that, learn from it, and move on. Because I always tell the CEOs is that when people are present, you're going to get the most and the best out of them. Because think about, it just goes back to even with people not being able to talk about themselves and their lives. Okay, if somebody has a partner, being afraid to say, oh, hey, you know what, just being able to be themselves and not hiding, who they are. And I have seen, some of those situations where people are so afraid to say, anything, because how am I going to be judged? What are you going to think of me? All that stuff is like, I want people to feel comfortable, to love who they are, and to feel so present at work that I don't have to be anybody else. Because when you are yourself, think about all the great stuff that you can do at work. I'm going to get the best out of you if I know that you're coming to work and being 100% yourself.
That's right.
Instead of hiding who you are.
Yes.
Or, faking my accent. Can you imagine? I mean, I remember having to commute to work 75 miles each way. And here I am with a video audio practicing how to get rid of my accent and being at work and trying to not having accent. Guess what? I spent most of my time quiet, not talking, because I can't get rid of that. Right.
Wow.
So again, it's like, it goes back to, again, I want to talk like, the who you are, just so many things, a novel that come into that place.
You're absolutely right. When you can create an environment where folks feel safe and comfortable to be themselves and to be mindful and present, they can bring their highest and best use to the company from an emotionally healthy place, not out of a place of pressure or fear or tyranny or whatever, but a place of love and value and respect, and bring their best self every day because they want to, not because they have to. It's a very, very different environment. The military is kind of very fear-based. Hey, if you mess up, okay, well, you're not getting the top block, or your NCOER, your OER, I don't know what the terms are in the Navy, but in the Army, the officer evaluation reports, the non-commissioned officer evaluation reports, you're going to get, you're not going to get the good bullets to get you promoted to the next level. And that's and at least that's how it was back in my days, which was many, many years ago. Maybe it's changed now, but the reality is in rank-based, positional-based, hierarchy-based, bureaucratic-based organizations, it's very easy for emotionally unhealthy people to misuse their rank, position, title, and power to create very unhealthy environments, right? One of the things I say is, for me, what I do is I help create emotionally healthy leaders, which help create emotionally healthy cultures, which create max outcomes and effectiveness for that organization. So healthy leaders create healthy organizations, which create healthy outcomes. But if that starting material, emotionally unhealthy leader, well, that's going to lead to an emotionally unhealthy organization, which is going to lead to less than effective outcomes and results. And so I just love that mindset that you have there about, hey guys, like be you and bring the beauty and the gifts and the strengths and the weaknesses of who you are to the table. And that's the team, right? Because you have strengths that I don't have. I have strengths that you don't have. But when we bring ourselves together to accomplish an objective, beautiful things can happen. That's just awesome, Gene. That's amazing. So go ahead. Tell me what you
Well, I'm also thinking, I was telling you about, just the bias that we bring to the table, right? So I was telling you about, we have had so many instances, and with people with their, they come in with their biases, and I detect that you have a bias, right? So I'm not going to be myself, and it really kind of breaks my heart because once you start bringing those subjective feelings to the workplace, if I detect that, guess what? I'm just going to kind of retreat to my corner and not going to be the best. I think all of us, when we come to work, I want to, I want to brag about my dogs. I want to brag about my son, my husband, just like anybody else with their family, friends, partners, and all that stuff. And we got to really kind of think about the decisions that we make and the things that we say and how they impact people in the workplace.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. That's awesome. Another excellent point. So in closing, I've got two more questions here. So In your emotional growth journey, as you know, personally and professionally, what have been some of the most helpful resources for you in that journey?
That's a great question. I'm going back to my coaching. Great question, Mr. Noble. I think the self-growth, right? And I talk about being intentional. I think, the coaching program that we have been through, that we're going through right now, has been very, very, very helpful. Just because when you're coaching, you're the thinking partner of somebody else who may be going through the same issues, right? So that's the biggest thing. A good support system is very, very, very important. For example, for me, for my growth has been my husband. Okay, so going back to keeping it real, feeling emotionally safe, somebody that you can rely on, that's going to be honest. And then you're going to be feeling safe. But also, I think that the self-discovery is very important. The self-growth, and I always tell to people, invest the time reading, talking to people like yourself. And to me, that has been the biggest things for me to evolve emotionally.
Awesome. Great ideas and suggestions there. How do we follow you? How do we connect with you? What's your company name, your website? How do we keep track of all your growth and success that you're doing?
Well, thank you. So Verbatim Consulting, www.verbatim.com. And you can follow us on LinkedIn and in Twitter and Facebook, Verbatim Consulting. And so our mission is to help people work better together. So anything that we can do to support, we're here.
Thank you so much, Gene. Amazing insights. Thank you for your vulnerability and your transparency and the insights that you shared. It was awesome getting to know you even better today.
And I won't hold it against you that you didn't join the Navy, Noble. The feeling is mutual. I wanted to say, thank you. Thank you for being you. That's one of the things that I admire the most about you, Noble, is that you're very transparent. And, I think as I get to know you more, I want to know when you're having a good day, a bad day, it's just like you're an inspiration. And I definitely commend you on your core values. So thank you for all you do, and, keep it up, because I know that what you're doing right now is making a difference in somebody's life.